We're live now, gentlemen. Yeah. On your cue, Carlos.
What's that?
On your cue, we're live.
Oh, okay, we're good?
Yep.
All right, so I will briefly repeat what I just said in regards to what we're doing here for the next 2 days. Safety, environmental. Again, this morning, a bunch of us were out on site looking at actual demonstrations in regards to reclaiming, surface cleaning, and environmental and safety. The classroom part is just as important, especially what's going on in California, West Coast. We got all this talk about the drought going on. As washers, we're out there on jobs. We're not quite sure if we're allowed to use regular water, tap water, irrigation, etc., etc. On top of that, over the next 2 days, we're going to be hearing from some of the top players in the industry that have a tremendous amount of experience in regards to reclaiming, environmental compliance. Even though something in a BMP may sound really good in writing, but when you go out to an actual job site and try to apply that, sometimes it doesn't work. Well, these are the guys such as Scott Stone, Tony Shelton, and a few others that are going to be speaking over the next 2 days. They're going to take all these fancy words that we've been hearing for the last 10, 15 years from the Clean Water Act and explain it to you in reality. What you can and cannot do as relates to pressure washing. So with that said, I'm going to introduce Scott Stone. He's going to jump ahead of Tony Shelton's presentation until we're able to figure out what's going on with the PowerPoint presentation. Scott Stone is the co-chairman of the UAMCC Environmental Committee. So Scott will explain a little bit who you are, where you're from, and then take it from there.
Okay, so like I said, my name is Scott Stone. I am from Phoenix, Arizona. I have been in business since 1989. I have been doing environmental recovery since 1995. I built my first rig. It was wonderful. It was filtered so good that it would plug up every time I went out. But it met the needs at that time because no one really knew 20 years ago exactly what was going to be required for environmental recovery. Oh, and I forgot to say hi, Jim, because Jim always watches, make sure I'm educating him properly. So my presentation is on the realities of environmental compliance. So who knows what the MS4 means? What does it stand for? Does anyone know? You hear all this talk about MS4, you can't let water in the MS4. What's it stand for, Doug?
Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System.
Oh, Doug, you get the Brownie Award. Here's a piece of candy for you. It's a Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. Why is this important to us? Does anyone have a clue why this is important to us as power washers? It's because we cannot let water go into the MS4 from our wash activities, right? Because then you're theoretically polluting the groundwater. Okay, next term. Some of these municipalities don't have an MS4. Did you know that? It goes straight into the sanitary sewer system. If you live in an area like Milwaukee, it's a really old city, or San Francisco or Chicago, those cities don't have an MS4. It just all goes directly to their sanitary sewer system. Does this mean that you do not have to do anything to pre-treat the water before it goes into the storm sewers, what we term the storm sewers? What do you think? No? What do you have to do, George?
You still have to pre-treat it for certain things like sediment and oil and stuff like that.
Exactly. The biggest thing that the stormwater people have, their biggest bugaboo, isn't the oils and the chemicals, it's the sediment. They don't want their storm sewers plugged up. Because if you've ever been somewhere where a storm sewer is plugged up, it gets really ugly really quick if there's a big storm coming. In Phoenix, you've got an inch of rain, and you're going to have floods all over town for weeks. Other places you get an inch of rain, it's like, oh, light shower. Who knows what MPDES means? Doug, you know what that means?
Yeah, but I can't remember.
Was it National Permanent Discharge Elimination System?
No.
Pollution Discharge Elimination System. Who is required to get an MSDS or MPDES permit? Cities, big factories. I'm talking big factories. mines, and any other major industrial sites, are we as pressure washing contractors required to get a permit? You're shaking your head no? Everyone agree? That's correct. We're not. We're not required. Now, there is an occasion. Well, I skipped right ahead that, didn't I? We're never required to get one. We may be required in some occasions to get a permit whenever your local municipality requires it. My city, especially in Phoenix, I have to have a permit because they just want to know what's going into the water. They want to know what's going into the groundwater. I still can't discharge to the MS4, but they want me to have a permit when I'm power washing. Now, for my business, I am constantly on city streets. That is all I do, is I do government contract work. My trucks never hit a parking lot, theoretically, unless my guys are taking them out. We're always in the city streets because we're cleaning bus stops, right? Where's that water go? Well, because of how fast we do it and how efficient we do it, very little water gets in the gutter. We wash all our water back into the landscape behind the bus shelter. Are we required? Because we don't clean the drives. We just clean the pads where people sit, right? I still am required to get a permit from the city of Phoenix because there's that little bit of water that might get in the gutter, and they want to know it's there. We don't use any chemicals, so they're. Feel free to get that, George. We're not required to use it. We don't use any chemicals, so they're not really concerned about us. They just want to make sure that we're not putting huge amounts of debris into the gutter. So when is enforcement possible? Doug, when is enforcement possible for groundwater?
When is enforcement?
When have you had enforcement done on you?
When I was turned down by a competitor.
Okay, so you got an overzealous competitor, right? I have had about, how long ago was it? It was about 17 or 18 years ago. I was washing trucks, and we were actually discharging the water to a 3-part separator, and the guy didn't know it. And he was riding through on his bicycle, went across our water stream, slipped and fell in the water, and he happened to be a wastewater control guy for one of the cities I worked in. We had a really big meeting, because I was subcontracting to Ryder at that time, and it was for their customer. So we were all there, and we had a really big meeting, and I was finally able to convince him that I was handling it properly. And basically, the biggest thing I did is I let him know that I knew what I was doing, and I also made him my friend. I became friends with him. Exchanged phone numbers, say, hey, if you ever have a problem, here's my number, let me know what you... And it worked. He never bothered me again. I've run into him a few times. Sometimes they're questionable, but because he knew I kind of knew what I was doing, that I had a good understanding, he let me go. He didn't worry about it. But you have to have knowledge so you can do it. The biggest exceptions to when you cannot discharge directly to the landscape are fleets and heavy equipment. And that's because of the oils, and also because on fleets, you're getting all that road grind from who knows where, and they want it all contained. So you can do a recovery. Now, is it hard? Doing fleets is not hard unless you're on dirt. Unless you're on dirt, fleets are not hard to do. Okay? If you're in an asphalt parking lot, literally they have a concrete to drain into the landscape. I have been known to dig a hole, put a 5-gallon bucket in, make a little apron, drop a sump pump in, all the water runs in there, pump it out to my tank, and it works perfect. It cost me, what, $100? Maybe. And I can take the pump with me to all my different jobs. You know, it can be that simple. And then you can create it. When I've done it, I've always had someone nearby that can discharge to their separator. So spot the primary wastewater containment device. Anyone see it? It's there. Actually, there's 2 wastewater containment devices in this picture.
Dirt and plants.
That's right, the dirt and plants. That's really the primary one, right? Those things will remediate soil faster than anything. It always shocks the environmental people that just dirt and the plants will remediate the oils and the chemicals and stuff really quick. There's another one there. You see it? Okay, I'm going to make it a little bit closer. See that little drain right there? If you look, it's right there. to the right of the tree. That is going into another separator for the property. So that's really the secondary. They call it a primary because it's an active thing, active recovery system for them. And this is all from that area where we were doing the demonstrations this morning. That little green belt there, this is all from there. This is actually a secondary containment. The sandbags around there aren't to keep water out, it's to keep sediment out. They want the water to flow over the sandbags into there so that they have the extra filtration. You need to learn how to spot these things, because once you learn how to spot them anywhere, it'll make your job a whole lot easier and give you a lot less worries and make you more informed and able to educate your customer so they know what you are doing. On target, Carlos? Okay. How about that? Is that a potential discharge location? It's a sanitary sewer. What do you have to do? Filter the water, filter out the sediment, filter out the oils. You can dump it straight down the drain. Anyone that's cleaning a parking garage, this works. The whole haul it away stuff,
If you have it.
if you have them. But you can usually find them, right? I've always been able to find one. I might have to pump it a long, long ways, but usually there's one nearby. And it's not like they're metered. I have cleaned parking garages where they had a separator in the bottom, and they said, oh, we don't want you using our separator because we don't have to pump it out again. But why have the separator? And I volunteered to pump it, and they were still like, they didn't know what to do.
So you have to filter out the water before you.
Right, you have to pre-treat the water, is what we call it. So you want to take out all the sediments. You want to run through an oil sock or a gutter critter or something like that, or gutter boom like Faith was selling. Something like that, just to take out all the potentials. You want to reduce it as much as you can because it's easier to dispose of a solid than it is a waste or water. You know, a solid, you put it in a leach field or something in some kind of container, let it dry out, you can just dump it in the dumpster. You know, it's a little bit harder to do that. You have to take time to filter the water and stuff. And the water is actually your biggest byproduct of a cleaning operation. And if you do it right, and if you filter it right, you can reuse that water multiple times. Because most of the sediment, you know, if it's a little bit brown, that's not that big a deal when you're cleaning a parking garage or a restaurant or something. Because your idea is to get the stuff that's embedded in the concrete and out of the pavers. So you can reuse that water, and that's how that Hydrotech system, I think Jerry's system was set up that way too, to where the water can be reused. So things to watch for: sediment, oils, and chemicals. They're not really worried that much about water. If you look at the Stormwater Act, some people can interpret it so strictly that treated tap water is too hazardous to put down the storm drain. It really depends on your location and how nutty the local people are. I hate to say nutty, but some people just get overzealous in what they're enforcing. They're not being reasonable. And we look for a reasonable thing. And a lot of it's just education. Sometimes they don't know the law as well as the contractor does. Tony actually took a test at a big regional environmental enforcement thing. He got the highest score on the test. He was the most accurate person. He was better than every regulator in the Southwest because he knew the laws better. And that's what you need to do, is you need to make yourself the expert, because you're selling your expertise, you're not selling power washing, right? So how do you prepare a job for recovery? What's the first thing you do? I stole some of these photos. I'll give proper credit as we go through. What do you do to prepare a job for recovery?
Figure out which way's downhill.
Okay.
Where are you draining?
What's that?
Where are you draining?
Okay, you want to know where your drainage is?
Put up berms.
What's that?
Put up berms.
You put up berms. What else do you do?
Get all the loose debris up first.
That's right. You know, I mean, that's the biggest thing. You want to get up your loose. This, by the way, I think this is Doug's guys. Doug, these are your guys? This your picture?
Yes.
Okay. I stole your picture. I asked you though first.
I don't mind that. It's steal for the best is what I always say.
Well, I couldn't find the best, so I got yours. Doug and I are friends, okay? But anyway, yeah, you want to clean up. The first thing you want to do when you first pull up on the job site is assess where the debris is and pull up the debris. If you're doing the job multiple times, and that's what I do, is I do the same job every day. My guys do the same job every day. they know where everything is automatically, and it makes it a lot faster. When I used to clean trucks, we could pull up and have everything set up and start washing within 3 minutes because everyone knew their job. I wouldn't even have to say a word. Just everyone would hop out of the truck and do what they had to do to set things up. You know, but if you know the job, it makes it easy. But the first thing you do is set up, do this. But if you're doing something like homes or a one-time job, when you do your bid, if I was you, I'd get a little map and mark out where the hose bibs are, where the drains are, and all that, so that when you do pull up on the job, because when you make your time, you make your money by saving time, right? No one wants to take 3 hours to set up for a 1 hour job. You want to be able to set it up in 5 minutes, get there, and then wrap up and pull out in 5 minutes after you're done, because that's when you're going to make your money. Okay, so but make notes, especially if you have employees. Make notes, especially if, and hopefully they can read your notes. You know, but make notes and tell them where the hose bibs are. Tell them where the drains are. Tell them, and if you can, draw a little map of how you want to have the property set up. I'm sorry, I keep looking over there and I forget to look over here. But make notes so that you know how you set up property. And honestly, if you are able to keep those notes in some way, more power to you. You know, you can. I'm sure there's an app somewhere where you can draw diagrams on a Google Maps picture to where stuff is. It'll make it so much easier that time and the next time and every time you go, and it'll save you time. And the more times you go there, the faster you'll get at setting up. Instead of having to, crap, where is that hose bib again? You know, because we've all done it, right?
You could start by just saying where to park the truck. From there,
Where to park the truck? Exactly.
from there, they know the hose should reach or whatever.
Well, yeah, exactly. Ron was talking last night, you know, you don't want to park your truck where your hoses are running across an entrance on a 24-hour store, right? You want to park the truck as close to the hose bib as you can so that there's fewer tripping hazards. Okay, another thing is setting up the recovery. You know, look at this. You can see how little water was getting by there. You all saw it if you were at the demonstration. This is a really good setup because really the goal is to capture about 95% of your water. No one's ever going to capture 100%. Well, I shouldn't say no one will ever capture 100%. It's really, really hard to capture 100%. And most municipalities are cool if a little water gets passed. You know, they want to see that your intent is to do as much as you can to protect the environment. So, you know, you filter out, this shows you filtering out the silt. You want to get that before it's in the vacuum because then it gets in your tank and it starts building up, and you know, it's all sorts of fun. And this, I like this picture because it shows how much the vacuum is actually capturing. You know, how much of the sediment. I mean, if you look past the vacuum, the water's clean. And before the vacuum, it's not. I'm really flying through these. Okay, this is a Hydrotech recovery unit. If you notice, it's a small unit. Really, it's really good for small jobs. If you're in a location, and thankfully I'm not in that type of location, where you have to recover, say, a storefront on a major city street, this is a really good type of unit to have because it's quick to work off of, and you don't need a real high volume. And another nice thing is it recovers the water, and it's set up so you can reuse it. Which actually filters down to 5 microns, which is really kind of cool. Because, you know, that little bit saves you a ton of effort. This is a bigger system. I was talking to him. This is able to filter 15 gallons a minute. Really, this is good for probably 2 to 5 gallon a minute machines because you want to have that buffer. But it has separation tanks, it has canister filters and stream filters and everything else, plus it has a coalescing filters to capture the oil. Coalescing filters are usually like pieces of plastic that the oil likes to stick to. You know, and it's really good for cleaning a parking garage. I can use it for the parking garages I clean all day long because, especially if you're setting up a ways the filtration system a ways away from your actual washing and letting the water run downhill. What's going to happen is that water runs downhill. It's going to start evaporating, right? Especially if it's hot water, it's going to evaporate quick. If you're in Phoenix, it evaporates really quick. And so by the time the water gets to the filtration system over 300 yards, I'm probably only filtering 5 gallons a minute out of 15 that I put down on the ground. Here's one of the Sirocco systems. This is actually Craig Harrison's. And here's another thing. I know the manufacturers aren't going to agree with me, but I haven't seen a system yet that has not had to be modified in some way to meet my needs. Craig was telling me the same thing. Anyone that's had one for a while knows that you're going to have to do some kind of modifications to make it fit, but it's a really good basis to start with. But you want, and there's Jerry in all his glory, you want an 8x10 doors? But this is Jerry, he's actually telling you about it. But if you notice, he has multi-stage filtration there because you all saw his trailer. There's 3 canisters there for the canister filters. And then he has an oil water separator. That's what that black tank is. And I think this, do you know if this tank, is this set up to be able to reuse the water? Do you know, Doris?
Yes.
I think it is.
Yeah.
This one, I
Was
can
it?
see it would have a black box.
Yeah, well there's a black box right there. So you know, that's the trend, is having a system.
Yeah, and the white filter canisters, yes.
Yeah. And that's the trend, is you want to be able to do it, especially in California, with the water restrictions you guys are facing. Arizona, we have no water restrictions. We're drier than you guys are, but we have no water because we have a huge groundwater table and we've been recharging it for years. We actually, in Arizona, we actually have enough water for the city for the next 40 years without changing anything, which is just nuts. That's if not another drop of rain falls.
So you said for California, you're recommending what now?
You want one of these recovery systems like this. If you're doing a lot of commercial work, residential work, it's a little bit different. But I only do government work. But before that, I only did commercial work. Commercial work, you want to be able to have something like this to where you can reuse the water. You want to check your local laws because they might have a problem with you transporting the dirty water from one place to another. You also need to know that you're going to need to sanitize those tanks every once in a while because funky stuff grows in them, right? Because I don't care how small a micron filter, that bacteria is really, really tiny, and it's going to get past those filters. I don't know what that picture is. Must have taken a picture of my foot. And crap. I guess that's all the pictures. So that is my 20-minute presentation that was supposed to take an hour. Pretty good, huh? Are there any questions?
Yeah, so we just did a presentation for the city of Beverly Hills. Right now, I don't know if anybody here knows about the city of Beverly Hills, but they've completely shut down any water service over there. So that means there's no pressure washing taking place. You can't even have the bucket and the squeegee right now. So we did a whole presentation, kind of just trying to bring knowledge right now to City Hall because they have a huge stress level right now, trying to make sure that the appearance and the perspective, of the drought is maintained. And it's actually coming down to LA right now. It's also at the gas company tower, and they want to make sure that there's a limited amount of water usage. And I was thinking, okay, well, how do you pressure wash? The limited water usage, and I was trying to educate them on recycling. So it's actually becoming now more of a perspective, more of an actual visual appearance, and it is more about the education. Because the pedestrians, when they're walking by a building, they're seeing water going everywhere, and they're not taking the time to actually stop and say, hey, you know what, let me educate myself. All they see is water going everywhere, drought runoff, everything like that.
Right, and there's a lot of people that don't understand that we're actually, by power washing, we're actually saving water. People will get out there with a hose and they'll spray for hours and hours and hours. Something that'll take a pressure washer 10 minutes to do. And they think that they're saving water by using a garden hose, when in reality the power washer can do it with a tenth the amount of water.
Well, in the 6-hour service, you're also using about 1,800 gallons of water as well, and that's without recycling.
Right,
So
exactly.
if you're recycling, you're using about 300 to 400 gallons.
Actually, 6-hour service, I'll bet you're using closer to 900 gallons because there's so many times if you stop to do something, it cuts your gallon usage every time. And I've done this a lot, and I've actually measured it. So for 225-gallon tanks, usually it lasts me 2 hours, even though I'm pumping 5 gallons a minute. Because there's those times you're stopping, you're turning, you're not constantly pulling the trigger. And so it actually uses even less water than the 1,800 gallons.
Yeah.
And what was that based on? What?
Per minute? So basically, we're putting out, if with consistent, you're putting out about like 4.8 gallons, and that's per minute. If you're consistently pulling that trigger, which no one really does, But we have a 270 gallon tank, so we're able to measure how much water we use.
Right.
We do the recycling. So that's why, that's how I got my number is
Yeah.
through multiple studies, I said, hey, around 320 gallons, because in a 6-hour service, we're not using much more than that.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's the extreme level. Is
And it's
1800
also
gallons.
the recovery process that we use as well.
Right. Any other questions? Any questions about me? Any questions about my business? Anyone questions about garage cleaning? I know about garage cleaning too. I cleaned a few of them.
You do. Are you Scott?
Yes, I am.
Finley, sorry.
No problem.
So there's a parking garage up the street here, and it's 2-level underground. And we've only done a few underground parking garages, and we thankfully had to use Jerry Sirocco because we found out we couldn't see about 10 feet in front of us in a matter of like 10 minutes because the ventilation was so poor.
Right.
How many of those underground structures do you find ventilation and drainage are huge encumbrances that need to be factored into the pricing versus an above ground?
I clean a few underground garages. Mine are, I was involved in the design process, which is really kind of cool because I can say, okay, we need a hose whip here and here. You know, we want fans here. If they're properly set up, they're really supposed to have fans to blow all that stuff out so you don't get all that steam and stuff in there and blow out the carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide and everything, all those nasty things. So you need to find out if the fans are working because they're supposed to have them. And they are able to turn them on to get fresh air in there. Have you ever cleaned a garage with a carbon monoxide sensor?
No.
If someone has,
They hurt your ears pretty good.
yeah, and the thing is they're right on the floor, and the fans are up higher, so the carbon monoxide builds up to about your knees, right? But it doesn't affect the rest, you know, it doesn't get high enough, but it's high enough to set off the sensors, and they go off all the time. I wear earplugs. I just keep on going. But, you know, that's me, running up, living life on the edge like I do.
Did the sprinklers go off from the heat?
The sprinklers, so the sprinklers are, you know how you watch a movie and the sprinklers, and there's all the sprinklers that go off? That's not how it really works.
It's just one or different.
Yeah, they actually have like a fuse that the heat, and the only time I've ever had a sprinkler go off, and I have had it happen 3 times, and it cost me about $400 every time it does it. But what causes the sprinkler, when I've had the sprinklers go off, is because someone parked the truck, it was usually me, parked the truck directly under the heater, and it's blowing straight up into the sprinkler. That's the only time I've ever had one go off. If I'm 2 feet away, I don't have a problem at all.
And it'll just set that, like a quadrant off, not the...
It'll set the one sprinkler off because it's just it's like a fuse. But it will put out an incredible amount of water. If you want to rinse a garage really fast, set off a sprinkler. I'm not kidding. I think they put out about 100 gallons a minute. I mean, it's just crazy. You have to go out. They'll actually call the fire. It always sets off an alarm. The fire department comes and they go in the room. They shut it off, and then your customer calls the fire control guy, and he comes out and he sends you a bill. Any other questions?
How do you deal with those underground parkings? Do you drive your truck down there, or do you leave the truck outside because of the carbon monoxide?
I take everything down in the garage. Because I don't. First of all, when I'm doing a garage, usually it's like huge. You know, my smallest garage that I do is about 150, 200,000 square feet. So I have a couple of garages I do that every year that are 600,000 square feet. That's a big parking garage. And so I always take my truck in. If you see my trailer that I use for garages, it's really low. It's way below the level of my truck.
My concern is the fumes and the burner and the...
I've never had a problem with it. I honestly have never had a problem. Carlos.
Scott, in your experience over the last, I don't know, last 2 years,
2 years?
2 to 3 years, have you seen more emphasis from municipalities as it relates to pressure washers being under the microscope more in regards to environmental stuff in lieu of global warming, drought stuff, or do you find yourself just more of business as usual?
Honestly, I have seen actually a reduction because they're getting more and more educated. They're having a greater and greater understanding. They still want you to do pre-filtration and sediment filters and all that, but they're more educated. They're not so quick to say you're polluting everything because you're diverting into the landscaping. They're understanding that no off-property discharge means that, yeah, you can divert into landscaping. They're getting that now. And it wasn't that long ago, 15 years ago, they didn't have that understanding. So there's a lot of education. In my area, Ron's done a lot of the education, and he paved a lot of that. Makes my job really easy. Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
When you do a parking garage multi-level, where do you start? Top, bottom?
I start at the top and let it wash down. It's just the easiest way. And honestly, the tops are easy. It's a good way to break yourself in. Just get that dust and stuff off there. And I mean, if you're taking a third the time of the other levels, you're probably taking too long.
In our area, if you have an open parking garage, the top is usually where all the algae grows in our area. So.
That is not something I have to deal with.
So when you're cleaning a garage of that size, 150 to 200,000 square feet, multi-level, say 6 levels, are you actually cleaning every square inch with the surface cleaner? Or are you working with like 2 or 3 guys with wands and pre-treating just the oil and rinsing as a team, kind of working your way down each ramp from like say 6 to 0? Well, what's the...
My equipment's a little bit different than most. I have what we do is when we clean a 150, 200,000 square foot garage, we have 3 guys in it. And I can do it in the night. Because I have a 40-inch surface cleaner, and I have a guy behind me rinsing. And the 40-inch surface cleaner is on a ride-on lawnmower, so I don't get tired and I just keep booking it. And I just zip back and forth all night long, and literally we do 25,000 to 30,000 square feet an hour.
So you do 25?
Yeah. If we have to clean the ceilings, which we really like to clean the ceilings because it makes them look better and it's really easy money.
Right.
Then it might take a few extra hours to do it. We'll have 3 guys in there just dusting the ceilings. Carlos.
Scott, what would be your advice to some of the cleaners here that, yeah, maybe they dabble in a little bit of commercial, they do residential, a little bit of commercial, but they really want to focus in, say, 2016. They want to make a big push into the commercial work. What would be your top advice to them as relates to, I won't say pricing, but as far as equipment and really establish themselves as a contractor?
Honestly, it has nothing to do with equipment. You can do anything. You can do anything commercial with the residential equipment as long as you have a hot water washer. I wouldn't want to do it with less than 5 or 3,000. The biggest thing to establish yourself as a contractor is plant seeds. Go and talk to people. Go and introduce yourself to HOA managers, which is not really commercial, but it is. The building managers and all that, building engineers. You want to introduce yourself to them and make that contact and plant those seeds so that they know who you are. So that when you do come to sell to them, it's like, oh, Scott, my best buddy, what is it? It's about making friends, right? It's about making people like you and and you have to establish yourself as a professional. I'm really good at coming up with unusual solutions. I'm really good at upselling and talking to people. For whatever reason, a lot of people like me. And so, but I have to establish those seeds and I have to establish those contacts and talk to people.
All right.
And I say I'm really good at it. The reason I'm really good at it is because I treat everyone they're my friend and I'm nice to everybody. I mean, I don't go in there swearing or anything. I'm just myself. And treating them like I would want to be treated. It really works well.
One of the things, and I'm sure you'll agree, Scott, that I think a lot of us have seen over the last year, especially on a social network such as Facebook, is questions being posed by contractors that maybe have 3 months under their belt. They've done 4 house washes, and they have an opportunity to bid on 750,000 square feet parking garage. What do I do? What do I need to buy? How do I price this? Someone hold my hand, show me the way. And
I don't respond to those questions. They're not prepared to do it. Honestly, my opinion is if you're asking a lot of those basic questions, you're not ready to take on that job. Because although we understand that every job has the same basics, there's going to be something different about every job, and you have to have a really good knowledge of everything in order to be able to figure out what the problem is. You know, power washing for all of us is basically the same. I can go power wash a house. There's no house power washing in the Phoenix area. I mean, really. There's one guy that does it, it's Ty. And he'll be here tomorrow telling you how to build your business. But really, Ty is the only guy I know of that does the majority of his business washing houses.